Today we are going to create a JavaScript app using a weather API. So first of all, here's an example of what our finished product will look like. It's a weather app. We can type in a zip code here and click on Get Forecast, and it tells us the city, the temperature, what the description of the weather is, and the humidity. All right, so let's get started on this. What do we start with? Well, first of all, where are we going to get this data from? So there are a number of APIs or application programming interfaces that are out that provide data like this. We are going to use openweathermap.org. Now, you will need, it's free to use, but you will need to create an account so that you can get an API key. That is something that you will need in order to use this. So I already have a key, but you'll create an account, and let's go here to the API and understand a little bit about how to use it. So we are going to use it to just get current weather data here. So I'm going to go to the API doc to take a look at it and to understand what I can do. So you notice we can get weather data by city name, by city ID. We want to do zip code, so I'm scrolling down to find zip code. All right, so here we go. So here's an example of how to get something by zip code. This is the site that we need to go to, api.openweathermap.org. Data, we're going to need this information. $zip equals, and we'll put in the zip code. I don't think we're going to need the country code. I think it's optional. And we'll need our API key. And if we want the temperature, depending on what we want, you'll notice here units of measurement. So if I want Fahrenheit temperature, I will have to use units equals imperial. All right, so just to give you guys an idea of what this will look like, I have a URL that I'm going to put in here, which is the API key. I put in a zip code. I just plugged a zip code in, plugged in units equals imperial, and my API key is actually a part of this string as well. And you see what you get back. What you get back is data that is presented in JSON format. Now, the nice thing about JSON format, it's an object. We know that because we see the curly brackets here. And JSON data is very readable. So we can take a look here and see what the data looks like. And you'll see, if I want the description here, the description comes from the key weather.description. And if we see what the temperature here, the temperature comes from the key main.temp. So this is going to be useful in terms of taking a look at this. You'll see the city name here is under name. You always need to take a look at your data in order to figure out how you are going to access it and display it. So let's get started. I have a folder called JS Projects, and I always start by creating a folder with that's going to be my project. So I'm going to call this Weather Ajax because we're going to be using Ajax calls, asynchronous JavaScript calls to get this data. All right, so I am now going to open up my editor. The editor I'm going to use is brackets, and I'm going to open that folder. So on my desktop, JS Projects, Weather Ajax. All right, so we have to start with, we're going to create a new file. I'm going to save this as index.html. Right, I'm also going to have a CSS file, so I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this save as styles.css. I'm not going to put a lot of CSS in it, but just a little bit. And one more file, which is going to be my JavaScript file. Save as, and I'm going to call it weather.js. All right, so let's get started on index.html, doc type HTML. Then, now there are editors that have shortcuts to putting these things in, but I believe the way to learn a language and get comfortable with it is by the repetition of typing the syntax in. That's how it kind of gets into your fingertips and you get used to what you need. So in my head section, I'm going to have a title. I'm just going to call it My Weather App. And in the body, we're going to use a div to put everything in. And inside of this div, I'm going to put an H1, which is just my title, My Weather App. And then I'm going to have a paragraph to give instructions. Enter your zip code. To get the weather forecast. Now we need a place to input that. And so I need an input element. I'm going to use type equals number. That way we know that the user is not allowed to type any alphabetic characters in there. My ID is going to be zip code because I'm going to need to reference this particular thing. And if I want to have those instructions in there to tell the user what to do, I'm going to use a placeholder that's just going to say enter your zip code. Right? Then we need a button that we're going to click. So I'm going to have a button, give it an ID so I can reference it. I'm going to call it forecast. And the text is going to say get forecast. And then I need a place to put the information that I get back. So I'm going to create a div, ID equals weather info. And this is where we're going to display the data that comes back. All right, so first let's just make sure my HTML is working. I'm going to save all. Let's go to my file over here. And let me get my Chrome window up, this one. And I want to open that file. So I'm going to open this index.html file with Google Chrome. All right. So looks like I have the fundamentals of what I want here, right? I've got a place where I can type something in. I've got a button that I can click. Nothing else is happening yet. Okay, let's connect our CSS. I always like to have at least a background color. So I'm going to have a link href equals styles.css rel equals style sheet. And let's go to styles.css. And we're going to give it a background color. I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to use pink. All right, let's save all, refresh my page. All right, so that looks like that's working. Just to add a couple more things here, I'm going to change my font family. Cursive. And font size 1.1 EM, so a little bigger than the standard, like 10% bigger. Right, there we go. All right, so I've got my CSS and my HTML. Let's link our JavaScript, and then I'm probably going to stop this video and continue in a second video. But first, let's just get our JavaScript linked. So in my JavaScript here, I always like to have using strict, and I'm gonna have a message to tell me that it is connected. So in HTML, I am going to put my script tag at the very end, right before the end of my body. That way I will be sure that the HTML is loaded before the JavaScript starts. So source equals weather.js, and that's all we need. So let's save this, run it, and we get the pop-up that everything is connected. All right, so this is what you have to just start with. Just make sure that your page has what you want on it, your CSS is connected, and your JavaScript is connected. Just quick little run through before we finish. Nothing fancy in here. I've got a title. I've got the link to my CSS. In the body, I've got a div. Inside of that div, I have my header, just my paragraph that says what to do, my input and my button, and a place to put the weather information. So there's no weather information here yet because there's no text in here, right? And then the JavaScript just has this. So now that I know it's connected, I'm going to just comment this out, and we are going to continue this in the next video.